This video is an overview of the scistarter dashboard that I help produce. Um, uh, Mostly my work is about social justice, right? And part of social justice is environmental justice, right? So it's really like a science communication bent, right? Because we need people to understand and appreciate science, and scientists need to appreciate and understand people and what they want, right? So I'm kind of that intermediary that I've been working in citizen science since uh, 2000 and something, right? The unfortunate thing about this project is it's not very easy to show off. There is a live version of things going on, but I haven't been on this project in 1 year, right? And so after a year, things change. They change things and they futzed with things, and apparently they didn't fully implement everything that was decided on and sent to them. So I did a lot more design and code than what's actually on the live side, I notice. Um, because at one point I had to just basically hand it over and say, now it's your turn to finish this off, right, to a developer. Another unfortunate thing is that while I had everything running, this is run on this project is built with the Django framework, right, a Python framework, which also uses just normal HTML and CSS, right, and JavaScript, normal web stuff. My role is front-end developer, but I also integrated a lot of the Django things, but unfortunately, though I'm in an environment, I just can't get it to run, and like I said, it's been a year and I'm not on the project anymore, so I don't want to spend 2 hours trying to get it to run. We can piece it together though by looking at things I've done, right? Like, so I've provided all of these, like, Django works with all these views, right? And so I'm combining HTML along with all kinds of logic, conditionals, and just templating and iteration and all things like that, right? So you can see examples of the type of HTML code I wrote for this. Also wrote tons of CSS with Sass, right? So it's pre-processed and has all different ways of going with it. It's a little bit of a spaghetti situation because this is a giant website where there's been a lot of other people doing things on this, right? So I had to kind of work less elegantly than I generally like to. But I've written different frameworks for them and things to override kind of the things I inherited. So going back to the actual live website, right? This whole thing is a dashboard system, and there's two parts of this. There's the dashboard for the citizen scientists. These are the people who are joining scistarter, coming onto scistarter, and trying to get involved in citizen science. And so scistarter is basically a router. It gets people to find projects that fit with their interests, their lifestyles, their locations, things like that. And then it puts it all together, right? And they're trying to move towards this social, kind of the socialness of this all, right? They're trying to put people together and realize social competition, social status, just sociality, right? So that's pretty much the whole part here, right? And they had a very bare bones dashboard when I came into the project with a view or two here or there, and it wasn't very usable. And so then my job was to come up with, well, what should we do with the dashboard system? And then, of course, also not just what do we do with it, but then I went all the way through, right, all the front end and part of the back end code, right? Because I'm not writing the databases or things like that. I'm not creating even the main Django logic and things, but I am using, right, Django in some way. So we can see this is the website as it stands right at this very second. Now, as usual, these kind of things, like, they're very stateful, right? So if you notice when I come to my login, this is my login. I have kind of a super login, so you'll kind of see some stuff that actually is kind of not, maybe other users wouldn't see. This Girl Scout thing is another project I did, and the general user wouldn't see this at all. But we can see kind of our I don't know why my name is Girl Scout. I have this weird picture here, right? But again, I'm just mostly testing. This thing of like, well, what should I do on scistarter? So we came up with this I came up with this to-do list system where it kind of helps you create, and there were points and things involved in with this, and they've changed things up here, but right, getting people to actually go through and use the features of the site, right, and giving them a cue as to why. We do recommendations based on previous projects or their demographics of what they should possibly join. And of course, we keep a running list of the projects. On scistarter, you can actually join to the projects. You can just save projects to do later, and you can save events, right? So it has projects and events that you can do things with. That's wrong CSS there. And there's many pages to this, but just thinking about that page, there's more than that. It's more stateful than that. So I think best is to come over here in the mock-up stages, right? Whoops, how did I get there? Right, we saw kind of what was going on there, but a little bit differently because things were tweaked, right? Also, there was another section, this lists or collections thing that hasn't been fully implemented, I noticed, so I'll have to talk about that. Right, this to-do list, once it gets done, right, statefulness changes, we've changed the layout a little bit, we have all these things, and we give a cue that, hey, you've done 100%, right, and all this stuff has been coded in the back end, it's just not implemented somewhere on the live site, some of these things, right. Other things though, right, there's more pages to this than there, right, so we have, right, the project is about mostly projects, and these two things are about projects, right? You can see my project you participate in. So right, so we have different types of projects, some that actually collect the data of how we participate, and some that don't collect the data, and so we use a little bit of social looking in, right? Like kind of like, hey, this many people did this, you should feel like part of a group. Right, and then these provide links, right? A lot of these projects actually take place off scistarter, and so we have various states that we send them to, right? And we also have bookmarks, so we can, as we're looking through the project finder and we find one that we might be interested in joining, right, we bookmark it so that later on I can go in. Some projects as well have kind of a temporal quality. It's like you can only do it during this month, right? So some of those projects we actually have built into it, and it's not on this mock-up, but it's on the live code, where you can set an alert to remember, like, oh, it's about to start, and it'll kind of ping you that it has started. And same, right, events where it will bring you and there. This is the list section that I was talking about, and this is an early mock-up apparently, because there are I did all the icon work and things for this, right? But this was a way, they wanted a way for people, again, to promote sociality, right? They wanted people just to like message other people, and they're big on that, but I've worked in citizen science long enough that I know that doesn't really happen with users. So I thought a good compromise is still have that system to do that, but people don't just call other people out of the blue. They don't just message other people out of the blue. And so I created this list system or collection system where people could go in and put together a suite of projects that say, hey, these are great for kids on the weekend, right? And other people can look in on these lists. And there's a whole system for that. That'll have to pull up the sketch, maybe the sketch things, or if they're in the Invisio thing here. Right, and of course messaging systems, interests, these are all just basic, right, settings things. These are what help with the projects that you like. You go and you fill this out, and that way you'll be told what kind of projects you should join. You can even set, right, it's location based, right, so it's you can add places so that some of the projects are very location specific, right, and again profiles, right, so about that social kind of status and things, like you could check in on someone's activity and the projects they do, and lists are on there, and there's, right, statefulness, right, there's a view. If it's your profile, you can edit it. If it's not your profile, right, obviously there's none of these editing things that come up, right, so it's very stateful. Of course, everything has been done both mobile and desktop, right? So I coded everything so that, right, one set of code drives everything, and we have different patterns. So you see here we kind of swipe to look through things on the mobile context, right, to not have it be this long giant list that we go down. Various things come up in different ways, right, and that should all pretty much be working here if I did this, right? So we see that. Besides that, and boy, I don't even remember how I get to this. There is a project owner view, right? So not only are there the citizen scientists themselves, there are people like whoever runs Coco Raz, right, has a login, and it provides an ability to message the people who have joined or bookmarked your things, to kind of cue them in to get involved. It has data out of how many people, how much activity has happened. Let's see if we have this here somewhere. Right. Okay. So like I know the manage volunteers, right? Like so you get a bunch of volunteers, and so you're able to figure out who's there, right? You can edit, right? You have the actual power to what scistarter shows the citizen science, right? You can edit it. Recruit volunteers, another way to try to find members who match kind of the way you are, your stats, and various tools, right? So this is there's all a bunch of different capabilities. I feel like this video is already going really long, right. So my process was to right. I talked with the client scistarter, right. We identified what we needed to do. I did basic wireframing. I tend to do wireframing just very roughly on paper for myself, and then put together very full visual mock-ups for the client, because I find they don't, scientists particularly, just wireframes kind of just doesn't jive with them as much. They'd rather see. And since this project already had logos and colors and some of the type choices, obviously I overrid some of the hierarchical choices and things like that as far as the design goes. But I did all that. Once we had it to a state where we were pretty happy with it, went to code, and then there was a little more give and take here because again. We decided on some new features. I wasn't very happy with that. We got a little scope creep going on. But eventually, it all came down to getting this all together, and I handed it over to them, and they implemented most of it on the website. And apparently right now they don't have 100% of it. As you see, the lists never apparently has kind of fallen by the wayside. That took a lot more back-end code, I know, though, but I had all the front-end code done of it. And all the design, the interfaces and things. So that is what I did. That was a kind of a very helter-skelter overview of what I did for the scistarter dashboard system.